Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri. And the question I guess we got to ask ourselves today is, are we in an everything bubble? We're looking at the stock market, bonds, real estate. I mean, do I say cryptocurrencies? Yesterday I did an interview and Bitcoin was $13,000. And now I'm looking at Bitcoin, $16,000. I'm sure it'll change overnight, and by the time this interview even gets posted. But things are moving fast, and I really want to get into the psychology of what we're dealing with right now in the markets and precious metals. And to discuss this with me today is Bob Moriarty of 321gold.com. Super smart guy, and someone who we're going to be able to pick his brain today. Bob, thanks for coming on Crush the Street today.
Well, I hate to tell this to you, Ken, but this is going to be your shortest interview in history, because when you say, is there an everything bubble, the answer is, duh. Of course there is. That was a great interview.
Well, I would agree with you on that. But the problem is people have been saying that for a while. I mean, we've been saying that in 2014, and you would have missed out on gains from 2014 to 2017 if you wanted to look at that objectively. I guess the question is how do you navigate that? How does the real person come down and say, this is what I'm going to do right now in 2017, especially, looking at real estate and the stock market and, their 401ks?
Okay, here's the deal. When you pour assets into a society, the money has to go somewhere. Dr. Mark Faber wrote a book, and he used a really good analogy. He said, think of money being poured into a bowl, and the bowl is carefully balanced on the head of a pin. It tips in one direction, and it tips in another direction, and it tips in another direction. And I personally think that's a very good analogy. Now, going back to what do you do, Rick Rule came up with a really great quote. He said, you're either a contrarian or you're a victim. Now, 18 months ago, I was in Switzerland. I was waiting for my wife to come to Europe. I was bored silly, and I sat down and I wrote a book called Nobody Knows Anything. And basically, it was trying to teach investors the things that they need to know to avoid. Okay? You cannot be part of the crowd. We're naturally animals, and if you've ever seen a school of fish or a flock of birds, how they turn instantaneously is almost magic, okay? But everybody does the same thing. And since in all investments there's friction because of the difference between bid and ask, and because of commissions, 51% of people have to lose in every investment, period, because it's a zero-sum game. So what you need to do, and I pointed this in the book, you need to find out what the mob is doing and then do the opposite. Now, I would challenge anyone to look at a chart of Bitcoin for the last week. It's gone from 9,000 to, let me see what it is right now, to almost 16,000 in a week. Now, here's what's really funny about Bitcoin. What is the value in Bitcoin? And the answer is there isn't any, okay? It's a Beanie Baby, except Beanie Babies were 99-cent fluff toys, and they had some utility if you're a 3-year-old child. And Bitcoin is an interesting use of a great technology. Now, everybody confuses Bitcoin because the great technology is blockchain. And blockchain is actually quite simple to understand. It's an accounting system but its accounting system is distributed across multiple computers. There is not a central computer like there would be with the government or with the bank. It's a distributed accounting system for tracking taxes, for tracking loans, for tracking shares. Blockchain is absolutely amazing. We're going to see some great things happen to it in the future. But what is Bitcoin? It's a currency that doesn't exist, that has no particular value. And if you look at the chart of last week, you could see a curvilinear rise. And when you see a curvilinear rise, it's about to burst. Now, could it go to 20,000? Could it go to 50,000? Could it go to 100,000? Yeah, it could. But by every measure, somebody did an interview and they talked to people who own Bitcoin and said, when are you going to sell? And everybody said, we're not going to sell. In my book, I pointed out that if you don't sell at a profit, the only other alternative is you sell at a loss. So Bitcoin's in a bubble, bonds are in a bubble. What are they going to do? Are they going to go higher? We got the lowest interest rates in history. How could bonds go higher? The stock market, look at the chart of the Dow and the S&P for the last week. They've gone straight up. Will they burst today? I don't know. Next week? I don't know. Next month? I don't know. But they're in the process, the bursting process right now. And when it bursts, a lot of people are going to be shocked.
Bob, let me jump in right there. I know a lot of people are going to be a little bit fired up at some of your comments at Bitcoin. I'm sure you know that, right? And I tend to have some different views on Bitcoin. I understand that Bitcoin is one of those things that can be duplicated. But in my opinion, there is some value to the fact that it's built up this network and people
let's switch roles. Okay. Let me do the interview and you provide the answers. We're going to do something a little different. What is valuable about Bitcoin? Give me three measures of value. Why should I buy Bitcoin?
Well, not necessarily at these prices, but the fundamentals behind it. You have a strong transaction network, and that can't just become.
Hang on a second. That's not Bitcoin. That's blockchain.
No. People are on the Bitcoin network, supporting that network specifically, and the hashing power on Bitcoin is through the roof. And
yep. But pretend I'm a novice investor. Give me three tangible reasons. What value is there to Bitcoin?
You can instantly transfer wealth around the world. You don't need banks.
No, you can't.
You don't need banks. You are your own banking system.
Let me read something to you from today. Okay, here, where is it? Okay, traders on billion-dollar crypto exchange say they can't withdraw money. That's on Business Insider today. Okay, Bitcoin mining service NiceHash says hackers emptied its wallet.
Right. That was an individual third-party problem with Bitcoin. That's like the Mt. Gox problem, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is the other issue about you can't exchange money. You just said it was possible to transfer money instantaneously. People can't even get their own Bitcoin out of the Bitrex. Okay, so give me something tangible. Give me something I can hold in my hand. I can understand.
Well, you also got to consider that it's a new paradigm of thinking. That's like trying to explain email to people. Yeah. Is email different than real mail? Because it's not something you hold in your hand, it's on your computer, does it make it any less viable for society? Look, Bob, I'm not trying. I really didn't want to turn this into a debate. And I actually want to pick I actually want to understand the bubble mentality of Bitcoin, because I believe you that Bitcoin is going to come down big. And I want to understand what the psychology is going to be in it, because I think this is so fascinating. Right now, Bitcoin believers, Bitcoin lovers think this is going to the moon, and all is good in the world. But I want to anticipate what that moment is going to feel like when we do have that reversal. We can debate why Bitcoin is gaining traction all day long. I think there is real value there. It's not something that is like gold that can't be duplicated, but there is value in the fact that people have adopted it. There's faith in it. It's not, you really can't hack Bitcoin itself. There's a lot of reasons why people have bought into Bitcoin and it's grown the way it has. So let's put that aside from now. I know maybe you don't agree with that, but let's talk about that bubble mentality. You know, go ahead.
Here's what you need to do. You need to go back to bubbles that we know burst. Okay, in March of 2000, the NASDAQ went up 19 days in a row. Now, if you look at mathematics, and on any given day, the stock market can either go up or it can go down. It virtually never stays exactly the same. So the odds are 50-50 on any given day that it'll go up or it'll go down. When you go up 19 days in a row, you're at something that only happens in theory every 100 million years. NASDAQ went curvilinear. The chart went straight up. It looked exactly like the chart of Bitcoin in the last week. Now, if you go back to January of 1980, on January 21st of 1980, silver opened at $50.25. Gold opened at $8.75. Silver had doubled in the last 2 weeks. Okay, it went curvilinear. Here's what's really, really, really important for readers and listeners to understand. People never change. They make the same mistake again and again and again and again. Einstein said that as far as he was concerned, there were two things that were infinite. One was the universe, and the other was the stupidity of human beings. And he said, but I'm not really sure about the universe. People make the same mistake again and again and again. You don't have to know anything about investing if you can recognize what the curve is of a bursting bubble. Now, when I saw the Dow going up, 300 points a day last week, I said, okay, it's blowing up. And time will tell, but I think it's pretty easy to see. I wrote a piece on April 25th of 2011, when silver hit 49 and change. And I said, okay, we've got a chart that's gone curvilinear. Okay, and every time a chart goes curvilinear, you've got a bubble bursting. And I got so much hate mail, I was absolutely shocked, but it told me that I was correct. There are only about 5 guys that I am aware of who actually called that turn, and I called it to the day, because people's behavior never changes. Now, here's something that nobody ever talks about, but if you think about it, it's true. Something is always in a bubble. Whether it's gold, whether it's silver, whether it's stock market, whether it's land, whether it's Bitcoin, people keep doing the same thing again and again and again. And once you learn to recognize what those patterns look like, I'm not saying don't invest in Bitcoin, but if you got it and you got a big fat profit, you should sell.
That's completely fair. What was the psychology, going back, let's say, to the 1980s or the dot-com bubble, when things did crash? How quickly did that sentiment change? And what were people doing in those moments of panic. And I'm just curious, like, how fast did all of that happen?
Literally instantaneously. In 1980, silver went from $50 to $35 in a week. And then it edged up to about $40, $41, and then it drifted down to $5 an ounce, I think, in 1986. The pattern of bubbles bursting is exactly the same every single time. So don't worry about the investment. I mean, the really funny thing about Bitcoin is nobody can justify any value to me any more than you could justify value to Beanie Babies. But did Beanie Babies go to $3,000 a piece? Yeah, absolutely did. People's behavior is always the same. If you understand people and if you understand nature, you don't have to know anything about investing. Just do the opposite of what the mob is doing.
But let's say Bitcoin, and I'm just going to ask you to take this opinion for a moment just to talk about the example. Let's say it's more like the NASDAQ in the sense that it's going up like crazy, way overvalued, and crashing down. What's the nature of where it settles? Does it just settle and it settles maybe like at 1,000, let's say, and it just trades there for a very long period of time as people just hate on it, and then, it slowly builds back up again?
In this case, you have to ask what the intrinsic value is. Gold has some intrinsic value. Silver has utility value. Beanie Babies were absolutely worth 99 cents a piece if you were a kid. I don't know that there's any intrinsic value to Bitcoin. I think that Bitcoins are going to go the way of the dodo. And that's just my opinion. There's nothing saying I'm absolutely correct. However, I don't see any particular value. It's not a good way of hiding money from the government. We've learned that recently. Government's going to kill it if they can. We've learned that recently. It's not scarce. They've already split off 3 times, and there's something like 1,100 variations of Bitcoin.
1,300.
1,300. See, I've been asleep for an hour. I forgot. So it's certainly not rare. All of the excuses that people use for it are not really valid if you examine it. But the key is, all you have to do is look at the chart. I'll tell you flat out, I don't know anything in history that was worth $9,000 a week ago and $16,000 today, period. There's nothing in history that things change that rapidly. That is a perfect measure of human stupidity.
I know there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with you on that, and I'm actually listening to you. I don't agree that it's completely valueless. I think there's value there, but you gotta really start looking at that chart and wondering how much higher it can go. I know John McAfee updated his prediction from $500,000 Bitcoin to $1 million because his data wasn't taking into account certain things. And if it doesn't go to $1 million in a couple years, he's going to eat his, what. And there's a lot of people saying that it's possible. I'm talking to Trace Mayer, one of the founding fathers, if you will, pioneers of Bitcoin in an hour here. And he was one of those guys who told people to buy it 25 cents and has been riding this wave up now to 16,000. I mean, he's probably, 100 millionaire. Who knows? Maybe even a billionaire right now. It's off the record. But, being able to really anticipate what the market is going to do, that's the key, is understanding what millions of people will inevitably do. And now we're seeing the futures, institutional money go into it. And it's really not fair to say that they're going into all the different ones. They're choosing Bitcoin because Bitcoin is Bitcoin. It's got first mover advantage. It's been proven. It doesn't have that central point of authority. On all the other ones, or a lot of the other ones, do have that central point of authority. And there's a special...
Let me give you a really good analogy. If you ever want to see a bubble that's about to burst or a bubble that has burst, find the dumbest person you know, and when they get into it, that is what in March of 2000, inmates in a jail in Baltimore, Maryland, were holding stock picking contests. Now, when inmates in a jail in Baltimore, Maryland are holding stock picking contests, you just ran out of buyers. Now, I think one of the greatest analogies that I've ever seen is Venezuela, okay? And Venezuela has to be run by the dumbest economic bastards in history. Venezuela just went to a Bitcoin variation for the currency, and I thought, okay, you know, they don't get any dumber than that.
Good point. Well, you know, and the thing is Bitcoin really like Beanie Babies? And we had a crash in 2013. It crashed big time, but it still kept being used as a transaction network because people liked it. And we're here because of the fundamental growth that we continued to see in 2015, where Bitcoin traded between $200 and $300 nearly the entire year. And it was the real fundamentals of people using it that caused it to trend higher and higher. And sure, we're getting into a euphoric stage where lots of people are getting into it, but does it fall back down to that intrinsic value of the fact that a lot of people want to use it and there's a limited supply of underlying Bitcoin? And
no, there is. There isn't. Okay, they can't split it 3 times and say it's limited.
It's those became altcoins. That's the difference, though. You can't have
1,300 variations and say it's limited. Damn, that's like turning turning salt water into gold. It wouldn't be limited anymore. There could be an intrinsic value. I'll give you credit for that. There could be an intrinsic value, and there could be some utility value. Nobody has ever been able to explain that to me, so I'll accept that it could be. But let me give you an example. Wheat will go below the cost of production. Now, why does it do that? Corn does the same thing. Silver does the same thing. Gold does the same thing. Oil does the same thing. Why did they do that?
Because people need it.
No, it goes below the cost of production because people need it? I don't think so.
Well, I'm just saying it goes below the cost. It continues to go below the cost of production and doesn't go away because people need it. That's my point.
That's my point. If it costs you $4 a bushel to raise wheat, will wheat ever go to, say, $3.90?
No.
Yes, it will, because supply and demand really does work, and people really are stupid. And there are times they get so stupid that the cost of commodities goes below the cost of production. But what happens after that? When you go below the cost of production, supply and demand kicks in, people stop producing. Uranium is a great example. 2 major producers have just said, we're going to shut mines down. The price is too low. Supply and demand does work. But the cost of production is absolutely a limiting factor. It's going to go below the cost of production, but it's not going to go much below the cost of production. Now, in 2000 and in 2008 and 2015, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of mining companies selling below the value of the cash they had on hand. I knew companies that were selling for 15 cents that had 22 cents on cash. Now, Is that rational? No, but people are irrational. And I don't want anybody feeling like I'm calling them stupid because I'm not, but collectively, people are stupid. Okay? They do irrational things. Bitcoin could have some utility value. I have no idea what that value is, but it will drop to whatever the real utility value is. $16,000 a Bitcoin that is not limited. We accept that. And it certainly can be taxed by the government, and governments are against it. And Venezuela's getting into it. These are all substantial arguments for, yes, it's a bubble, yes, it's gone curvilinear, and yes, it's going to crash. And if everybody agreed with me, I would be wrong. I'm only correct because everybody's going to disagree with me, and that's a good thing. I'm a contrarian.
Well, I can just say I'm glad I bought one I did, and I'm up big, and I will take my profits and be very happy about it. And we'll put some of that into precious metals. But I'm not going to sell everything because I do believe that the possibility for it to go to 50,000 and 100,000 is there in theory. And there's real value to Bitcoin. The flip side to that is, we are going to see that in precious metals eventually. We're going to go into some sort of bubble phase with gold. And I'm curious as to how you will know when to sell if it does go into that bubble phase. Do you just ride it up when gold goes from 1,300 to 2,000 and then miss out if it goes from 2,000 to 10,000? How do you judge that?
I'm going to do it exactly the same way I did in 1980. I am always going to sell too soon.
Okay.
But you are correct, and you just said something really important. And for guys who love gold and who love silver and worship at the Perma-Bear altar every day, gold and silver are going to go into a bubble someday, and there will come a time to sell, regardless of what you're being told by the media. The key is all bubbles act exactly the same way. And gold and silver will get to stupid prices, and if you're smart, you'll sell early.
Sell early. When you do see gold start to move higher, is there any truth into getting in while we have that momentum? Because let's be fair, with the Bitcoin run up, if you were to see what we started to see that big push higher, 1,000, 2,000, and you start to notice that the tide is shifting. Do you jump in more aggressively to catch that run higher and then get out? Is that something you'll be doing, or are you just positioned now the way you want to be and you'll get out when you want to be?
I am spring-loaded to the profit position. How many reasons are there to sell a investment?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Well, as far as I know, there's 10,281. There could be more than that. You need a new Porsche. Your kid needs glasses. You want to go on a vacation. You hate gold. There's all those reasons, okay, to sell. But when you invest in any investment, how many reasons are there to buy?
One, to profit, right?
What is that?
To profit.
You buy because you want to make a profit. Now, I want to point something out, and you're being irrational, okay? Is Bitcoin 50% more valuable than it was a week ago?
It is.
No. Is it more valuable? I'm not saying is the price higher. Is it handier to have now than it was a week ago?
No, not in what you're saying, but what we're seeing, I mean, you're discounting the fact that it's being adopted by the big money. That was true of tulip bulbs. That was true of Beanie Babies. Here's the key, and you're arguing against yourself. If you got a giant profit and you're up 50%,
in the last week. Do you really believe it's going to go up 50% next week? If you really believe, then you should sit. If you don't believe, take the profit. Nobody ever went broke taking a profit. They only watch it go to 50,000, okay, and they bought it $200, and they wait until it goes to $150 on the way down, and they finally say, well, shit, I should have sold at 50,000. You know, I learned my lesson. I won't do that next time. You either take a profit when you've got it, or you're going to make a loss. If I had a 50% gain in anything in a week, I would sell it.
I don't disagree with you, but the problem is we could have had this conversation at Bitcoin 1500, and I've had this conversation at Bitcoin 1500 with people who said that Bitcoin is worthless, and they would have sold and they would have missed out on a 10x return.
No, you can't kiss all the pretty girls. The fact that something's gone up, who gives a damn? Everything goes up sometimes.
That's fair enough. Look, I actually I'm listening to you. I'm not one of those things. I'm not completely on the other side of the coin where I just want to see my profits go to nothing. That's in the end, I care about the same thing, and that's making money.
Well, let me point something out to you, and this is very important for your listeners to understand. There are a lot of people, newsletter writers, commentators, television preachers, politicians, who have learned it's easier to fill people's fantasies than it is to understand what you're doing. We would never in 100 million years vote for an honest politician. We do not want to elect honest politicians. We want to elect the crooked bastards who tell us the lies we want to hear. So when you're doing an interview or when you're listening to an interview, if you believe every word that you're being told, then you're being told nonsense. If the interview doesn't challenge your belief systems, it's actually a really terrible interview. It's not going to hurt my feelings if people disagree with me. Hell, I'm a contrarian. Everybody disagrees with me. You know, that's not going to hurt my feelings. But it's very important. If you're going to learn something, you have to challenge your belief system. So if you can come up with 15 reasons why Bitcoin is the most valuable thing since sliced bread, I mean, send me an email and tell me what they are. I'd love to hear them.
Well, I would say that those are the reasons why we're seeing $16,000 Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But yes, point well taken, Bob. I appreciate your comments on this. And look, you know, I'm happy with Bitcoin. It's one of those things, you know, if I'm right 51% of the time in life, you know, that I'll be very happy. And this was one of those times where I've been very happy to be positioned in very early and watch this thing ride up. So, I again, points well taken. You know, as far as what people should be doing with precious metals, we've been in this call for about 30 minutes. I really want to get your thoughts on gold and silver right now. Talk about a contrarian investment. Silver's hitting new lows for the year. Gold is lackluster. I'm sure it has to do with the stock market hitting new highs, unemployment numbers, you know, the fake unemployment numbers hitting lows we haven't seen since, what, 2000. Inflation almost 3%. Which is supposed to be a good thing for the economy. You know, let's just get your thoughts on that before we close this interview.
Okay, well, everybody should come to 321 Gold. It's kind of a Wall Street Journal for research into financial and resource stocks. I write 5 or 6, maybe 10 pieces a month. And some of them are very topical and some of them are very timely. My opinion, and opinion is in quotation marks, it did not come down the mountain with Moses. My opinion is I would like to see a crash in gold and silver into the end of the month. I'd like to see gold go down to about $1,200. We have too many bulls now. The speculators are way bullish on gold. They're still way too bullish on silver. The speculators are always wrong. They want to buy at tops and they want to sell at bottoms. I think we're going to have a bottom coming up shortly. They're going to get another opportunity to sell at bottoms. And I think we're going to have a real strong first 6 months of next year. In relative terms, the gold and silver resource stocks are cheaper today than they were when gold was $400 an ounce. When you make an investment, what you're really betting on is other people being irrational, and people are being utterly irrational now. Markets go up, markets go down, and that's a good thing. The speculators are too bullish. They're going to get burned. They're going to sell at the bottom, and that will be a wonderful opportunity. We've had the low for the year in December every year for the last 5 years, and you know, you're going to have a low every year. You're going to have a high every year, and mathematics says it should be shortly.
All right, everyone. If you want more of Bob Moriarty's work, visit 321gold.com. Bob, I really appreciate your time with me today and, discussing, bubbles and the psychology of bubbles and why there's nothing wrong with taking a profit. So thanks for coming on Crush the Street with me today. I really appreciate it.
Okay, it was a good interview, and there wasn't any requirement that you agree with me, but it certainly will stimulate your thinking, and I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to speak to your guests.